Welcome to ePathshala, Unit 29 of Applied Linguistics. The title of the module is Pragmatics and Language Teaching. For any language learner, it is important to realize that the meaning of a given discourse, however short it is, extends far beyond the words and sentences it consists of. There are meanings that transcend the simple coding decoding framework of communication. The speaker or writer and the hearer or reader must share a lot more than just a dictionary meaning of words and syntactic structure of sentences. Now, what the domain of semantics tries to do is that it tries to formulate rules for formulating meanings of sentences as these are contained in the words and sentences that constitute the given sentence. Whereas the domain of pragmatics goes beyond that and exposes the meanings of sentences as it gets accentuated in a given context, focusing on the intentions of the speaker and the perceptions of the listener. Hesitations, pauses, repetitions, deictic references, etc. all acquire a very special status in really appreciating the full import of an utterance. The implicit meaning may dominate the direct meanings, and there might be confusions and ambiguities which are contextually and not linguistically determined. Conversation would be impossible without Grice's cooperative principle and its attendant maxims. We'll discuss the cooperative principle and Grician maxims in this module. As Sinclair says, we should trust the text. We should be open to what it may tell us. We should expect that we'll encounter unusual phenomena. We should accept that a large part of our linguistic behavior is subliminal, that is not obvious, and therefore we may find a lot of surprise. As Sinclair says, we should trust the text. We should be open to what it may tell us, and we should expect that we will encounter unusual phenomena. We should accept that a large part of our linguistic behavior is subliminal. That is, a longer part of our linguistic behavior is not obvious, and therefore we may find a lot of surprise. Now let us discuss some examples. Assume that you have English as your first language and you're trying to learn Hindi. In English, even though you may adopt several politeness strategies to suggest deference, for example, you may say please, may I, etc. The only lexical item available to address a second person, irrespective of their age, status, and your relationship with that person, is the second person pronoun you. That indeed is not the case in Hindi. In Hindi, you need to learn at least 3 items corresponding to the English you, and their use is correspondingly marked in the verbal complex too. Their use is also socio-culturally embedded. In general, one would use tu with people of extremely low status. If used insensitively, it can be rude. On the other hand, it is a marker of intimacy, love, and affection, often used for mother, God, and dear friends. It is regularly used among friends in informal conversation as well. It can also be used to show contempt, anger, and disgust. The intermediate form tum is really neutral in terms of politeness and is most safely used among equals, friends, and with juniors. The most honorific form is aap. Normally, it is used with superiors and with all the people whom you wish to show respect. Suppose you know 2 languages, let's say Hindi and English, and you are a guest for dinner at a friend's place with whom you are not very intimate. Also assume that the salt in the food is not to your taste. So you have several choices here, including not to say anything, just have the food and the taste. Or you could say, I guess I'd need some more salt. Or could you please pass me the salt? Or pass the salt, dear. Or you can even say that perhaps you forgot to put the salt in the vegetables. So none of these choices are neutral. In all of them, the message transcends the linguistic coding. That is, uh, what is actually said is a lot more than none of these choices are neutral. In all of them, the message transcends the linguistic coding. That is, what is actually said is lot more than what is noticed in the words alone. It depends on how you perceive your relationship with that friend of yours and his family. To what extent you would like to please or offend him, etc. Now we'll discuss Grice's cooperative principle. Paul Grice in 1967 argued that people are disposed to believe that communicative behavior is guided of a set of norms and that communication will tend to break down if those principles are not followed. He called them the cooperative principle and maxims of conversation. The cooperative principle says, make your conversational contribution such that, as is required, at the stage at which it occurs by the accepted purpose or direction of the talk exchange in which you are engaged. For example, if someone asks you where are you going and you replies, my father is a doctor, that conversation hardly makes any sense, and such kind of conversation would easily break down. The cooperative principle functions with four of attendant maxims of quality, quantity, relations, and manner. The maxim of quality tries to ensure that what you say is true. That of quantity ensures that it is adequately informative. The maxim of relation refers to the conversational input being relevant. The manner maxim tries to ensure that the speaker's contribution is suitably precise and effective. Now let us look at a dialogue situation. The situation is such that Kiki and Sharon are students at a British university. They have been flatmates for a short time and do not know each other very well. Kiki is Greek and Sharon is English. Sharon is getting ready to go out, and there's a conversation that happens between Kiki and Sharon, and you can see this conversation in the PowerPoint presentation. There's so much to read between the lines in this particular conversation, or any other conversation for that matter. Consider, for example, that Kiki finds it perfectly legitimate to ask where Sharon is going, but when she is asked the same question, she feels uncomfortable. Also note that Sharon does not give up. Instead, she finds a reason to elicit the required information. There is obviously an extent to which Grice's cooperative principle and maxims are followed. You can say ministry, but if your interlocutor does not understand what you mean by that, you need to explain that it is not a part of government system but a club, which is exactly what Sharon did. And what does nice one mean in response to the end? Negotiations of such meanings regularly take place among interlocutors and show that the linguistic meaning highly underdetermines the intended meaning of the speaker. The domain of pragmatics precisely examines the interpretation of intended meanings. When you speak, you don't just produce a set of speech sounds in a certain order. But what you actually do is, when you perform a speech act, you're not just making blank statements that are true or false. Instead, you're making request or asking permission or making polite request or threatening or being aggressive, etc. The speech act theory is another way of examining what keeps a conversation going in a given context. The focus is on the relationship between the linguistic form and its communicative function. There is also the dimension of politeness. Every person has a positive face and a negative face, and he or she does not want either of their face threatened or insulted or underestimated. The positive face refers to the fact that all of us like to hear nice things about ourselves so that we continue maintaining our self-esteem. On the other hand, we expect that people would pay due deference to our negative face, which refers to our right to privacy and individualism. Pragmatic considerations should form an integral part of second or foreign language teaching. It is not enough to know the sounds, lexicon, and syntactic structures of the target language. One also has to have some sense of what to say to whom, when, and where. Now let us look at an example between an Indian English speaker and a speaker of British English. The conversation goes like this. The Indian English speaker asks, "Would you like a cup of tea?" To which the British English speaker responds, "I don't mind." And there's a confusion, and the Indian English speaker responds in such a way that, "You mean you want it or you don't?" To which the British English speaker responds, "I will have it if you insist." Now there's a confusion in this conversation. The pragmatic consideration dictate that the conversation should be more like the conversation should be in such a way that when the Indian English speaker asks, "Would you like a cup of tea?" the British English speaker could have responded either as "No thank you" or "Yes please." In such a way, it is important to build pragmatic consideration into our materials and teaching methods. It is important to know the pragmatics. We should know much beyond the literal meaning of sentences or words. So in this module, we discuss the importance of pragmatics. Pragmatics goes beyond. In this module, we discuss the importance of pragmatics. Pragmatics goes beyond the word or sentence structure and explores the meaning of sentences as it gets accentuated in a given context, focusing on the intentions of the speaker and the perceptions of the listener. Hesitations, pauses, repetitions, deictic references, etc. all acquire a very special status in pragmatics. We also discussed Grice's cooperative principles and maxims of conversation. When these maxims are violated, the conversation breaks down sooner. It is necessary to build in pragmatic consideration into our teaching materials and teaching methods so as to have a good understanding of pragmatics. Thank you.